and they can show to the ladies and gentlemen of a jury that it is because they were at your place, then there will be an enormous price to pay. I would hate to be the one to try to explain to a jury of your and my peers that I, in opening up my establishment, whether it is in the daytime or the nighttime for any age, and allowed people to come in and to congregate and to be close and to violate all the rules, and I allowed that to happen in my place, and someone were to get sick and die, and they can prove it, that that's where it came from. They can eliminate to other places. I would not like to be the one trying to explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury why I allowed that to happen. We don't want to get into that sort of thing. These death figures, these high infection rates, they're frightening. But we're better than that in this state. But we've got a test coming up. There are a lot of the young people just don't think that the younger generation, maybe a couple of generations, just don't think that it's going to happen to them. Well, they're young and strong, and as many in this room are, and chances are the disease will go right through them. They may feel a little ill, maybe not even feel it at all. But anyone that they come into contact with while they're carrying that disease, while they're breathing, while they're perhaps coughing, sneezing, or maybe just breathing in close contact that is in an older generation or somehow is weakened, then that person is going to get that disease. And so we've got to be very, very careful. 4th of July is a time when we celebrate, but we have to, and we're going to celebrate. This is a great country, for goodness sakes. The 4th of July is a wonderful celebration. What it signifies is unique in the world, the history for this great country. But again, I can't say it often enough or strongly enough, we have got to be careful. And if we want to go into the fall with the schools opening, with football games and all of the things that go along with that, all the kind of celebrations and concerts and gatherings, we must control the spread of this virus. So I ask and I urge everyone to take this thing seriously. And if we do that, if everybody does that, then we'll be in good shape. If there are many of us who do not do that, then we will not be in good shape. And what's usually a great celebration with spectator sports and concerts and those things will be very quiet time in South Carolina. So, with that, we'll be glad to answer questions. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, why not take make additional restrictions now that we are seeing a spike? For example, beaches this weekend. Any plans to close them since we've seen a lot of crowdiness?
The local authorities have the means at their disposal. As you can see from various ordinances, and only a few have passed ordinances recently, but some of them a little bit the same, but mostly there are a lot of differences. They have it within their authority to do certain things, and they ought to consider those, and they ought to do it. Be sure don't go over the line of what would be a violation of someone's constitutional rights. But this is a serious disease, a serious health hazard, and they do have those kind of responsibilities, but we cannot enforce all that. We can pass, if passing a law with a stiff criminal penalty stopped crime, we wouldn't have any crime in the state, wouldn't be a soul in the jails. But passing a law, having a resolution, it may help, but it does not stop it, and we cannot enforce this. This is too big. This is all across the state. Every local jurisdiction is a little bit different. So I urge all the local authorities to do what you can, get the message out, take the steps you think are necessary. Be careful. Don't go overboard, but be careful. But the responsibility lies not with someone on stopping you, but on you stopping you. That's the whole point. This is something that unlike anything we've seen before. Yes, sir.
Governor, DHEC yesterday urged people to have at-home festivities to celebrate the holiday. Do you agree with that assessment? Should people stay home this weekend?
I think it's great. Those that would like to stay home and want to make that decision, that is a good decision. But if you don't want to stay home, if you want to go out, everybody knows what they ought to do and what they ought not do, and that's what they need to do. It's real simple. There's no mystery in this at all anymore.
Also, Lexington County Blowfish, we're apparently selling tickets for a game this evening, for the start of our 30-game schedule. Do you support them playing, or even playing a game with or without fans in the stands? And should they cancel tonight's game?
Well, spectator sports are not allowed under the existing executive order. And I would say again, those who violate those existing executive orders, those lawful orders, there will be consequences of some kind.
What's the penalty?
Big pardon?
What's the penalty for operating when you're not allowed to?
It depends. Typically, it's 30 days, or I think $100 in jail, or you also have, again, the civil consequences that I mentioned earlier that may be a little time in getting here, but will arrive under the right circumstances, or I'd say under the wrong circumstances. We got to be careful. Yes, sir.
Governor, what are your thoughts about the the suspected coronavirus clusters that have come from Myrtle Beach into West Virginia, and some of the things that the governor there has said about travel to South Carolina?
Well, we had said the same thing when the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, issued a domestic travel advisory for New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and the city of New Orleans. We responded by requiring people from those places to quarantine, and also we didn't accept reservations in hotels. I think every state is doing that. There are a number of states that have fallen into the category of the kind of disease rates, contagion rates that a number of other states are referring to. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, everybody's being careful. Yes, in the back.
Dr. Bell, this is a question about the death rate. Are you concerned at all about the death rate? We've been hearing from people who are saying, hey, we're not as alarmed about it or we're not taking as many precautions because the death rate isn't as alarming.
I'm very concerned about the death rate. Any one death is too many. Maybe people are thinking about the death rate is not going up as quickly as the disease activity rates are, but they are now beginning to creep up. So the more people who become infected, you can expect that hospitalizations will increase and that deaths will increase, and those can be preventable. So yes, I'm very concerned about each and every death that's reported to us.
Dr. Bell, where are you guys at with contact tracers and volunteers? Are you looking for more? Is it too overwhelming at this point, as you mentioned, to track around 4,000 people a day?
Well, yes, so that our priority for contact tracing, we will continue as best we can to notify each case that's reported to us as quickly as we can, and to try and notify the close contacts. Many people don't want to be notified. That makes that more challenging. But as cases increase, we have to prioritize on settings where the risk is higher. So as, with workforce limitations and things like that, and the time involved in the thousands and thousands of cases each day, we will focus on healthcare facilities, nursing home facilities, assisted living facilities, those types of congregate facilities where there are vulnerable populations, and any reports of clusters that we see in facilities where disease transmission can occur within a defined population. Those will have to be our priority, because those are settings where we can do containment interventions to prevent disease spread, but once it's at the population level, then again we have to focus on population-based interventions that are much more effective when disease is widespread.
And do you know the percentage of people that are getting back to you guys that you are trying to contact and notify? Do you know that percentage off the top of your head?
No, I don't know off the top of my head.
And Governor, 2 questions for you, if you don't mind. Can you explain, you've repeatedly mentioned that it might not be constitutional in order to enact specific statewide ordinance, a lot of times referring to mask ordinances. Can you explain the constitutionality behind that in your argument for such? Why it would be overreach?
Restrictions on people on their right to assembly, their freedom of religion, for example, we know of that. The freedom of speech, but in this instance, particularly the freedom of assembly. The cases, this is a legal area. Most people don't get involved in this sort of analysis, but legally, you cannot take that away from people unless you got a real good reason. And if you have a good reason and you take it away, what you do must be limited, it must be effective, it must be targeted, it can't be more broad, it must go only to the issue and must be effective against that issue and must not be for 1 second longer than is necessary to effectuate the purpose. So when you try to have a statewide ban on things that restricts people's liberty, each town, each county, they're not the same. The businesses are not the same. The people are different. They have different customs. They have different ways. The stores are different. The institutions are different. So one size is very difficult to fashion a one-size-fits-all for the 271 towns and the 46 counties and the other, I think, about 129 communities in South Carolina, most of which, as you know, they're quite different. But those communities know their own geography and their people and their businesses, and they could do a valid job, I think a defensible job, if they believe that it would work of targeting what they need to target. So that's why I say this is an easier thing to be done at a local level than it is at a statewide level.
But just to follow on that,
and the consequences are, if it's too broad, someone goes out of business or something happens, then those who have issued the prohibition are responsible financially and otherwise.
But, and again, just to follow on that, you were saying that this needs to be limited, so in terms of maybe a limited timescale, and as well as it needs to be directed, and you need to show public impact. We did shut down businesses statewide, and but couldn't you also make a recommendation or make an order that states and local municipalities would have to come up with their own ordinances in accordance with what their community needs?
That's what we were just talking about. We've gone over these kind of details and this kind of recommendation multiple times from this very place. Some have taken action, others took action prior to that encouragement. But there are others that can do various things, and if they see something that needs to be done, they ought to do it. But again, there's not enough enforcement mechanism, enough police or others to go to enforce this. So it's necessary for every citizen to understand, don't wait for somebody to come tell you to quit doing it. Just be careful, follow the rules yourself, and we don't need that. Yes, sir, in the back.
Are you telling local states and local municipalities to enact an ordinance or to do that?
I'm telling them that they know this. I've had conferences with mayors since this began. They have, under home rule, they have authority to do certain things. Health ordinances are within that ambit of authority, but again, it's not unlimited. They must limit it. It must be targeted and limited, as you said. Yes, sir.
So what else can be done in terms of on a state level to get people to wear masks, to social distance? Because it seems as if they can't.
There's
they're not
very
listening.
little. In addition to what we've done, you can't make people do this. The only way to make them do it is to be able to enforce it. But the best way is to give the information to the people, to make them understand, allow them to understand what is at stake, how this disease is spread. And we have discussed that. You can't turn on the television without seeing something about it. And to follow those rules and take care of themselves and help their neighbors as well. Joe?
Governor, the Lexington County Blowfish are arguing that there's a loophole that allows amateur sports to take place without stopping fans from.
I don't know what that loophole is. Not aware of a loophole.
Two questions.